It's a Heidel minicast. And now, Scott Clark.
Today's Heidelcast comes from an essay by John Muether, published in 1990 in a collection of essays titled Theonomy, a Reformed Critique, edited by William S. Barker and W. Robert Godfrey, published by Zondervan. And the title of the essay is The Theonomic Attraction. And John was trying to explain why it was, in the late 80s and early 90s, people were attracted to theonomy. And I thought it was useful to reread this essay and consider it against the background of a resurgent theonomic movement in the first quarter of the 21st century. And we're on page 252, where John is discussing theonomy as a democratic movement. If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? You can make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link on the Heidel blog, or by mailing a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027. John writes, in the book Evangelicalism and Modern America, church historian Nathan Hatch has a chapter entitled Evangelicalism as a Democratic Movement. In it, he describes evangelicalism as a grassroots movement with no hierarchy and no headquarters, but with a very sophisticated network of parachurch organizations. This is a democratic network of voluntary associations, Hatch writes, and he argues persuasively that this democratic, lowercase d, character explains the success of evangelicalism. Theonomy seems to have grown in a similar way. It is intentionally parachurch, with a network of newsletters, conferences, publishing houses, TV shows, and even celebrities. Hatch notes that as a parachurch democratic movement, evangelicalism holds the institutional church in low regard. Again, this is a tendency of many theonomists. We have noted theonomy's relation to the charismatic movement. Gary North draws this startling conclusion about the, quote, healing services, close quote, that is, Tyler, Texas church recently adopted. Quoting here, the healing did not lead to tongues speaking, but it did lead to a new willingness to accept the fact that no one ecclesiastical organization has all the answers, close quote. This ecclesiastical relativism is astonishing from an allegedly reformed author, but it is consistent with contemporary evangelicalism. Consider also the words of theonomic pastor Joseph Morecraft. In a television special on theonomy hosted by Bill Moyers, Morecraft spoke positively about the union of the light of Reformed theology and the heat of the charismatic movement in the Reconstruction Alliance. Baptists, Methodists, Episcopalians, and Catholics are also joining the movement, he claimed. Quote, denominational affiliation means very little to the theonomic movement today. There is, among these people, common principles and common faith, close quote. From another Reconstructionist voice, Ray Sutton, comes this call for ecclesiastical pluralism. Quoting here, I think denominational diversity, and it goes on to say, has facilitated broader and deeper expansion of the church. Also, I think it is naive to assume that the church would get along better and or function better if it were all under the same governmental roof. Maybe Christians would fight more if they were all in the same church. The indifference toward ecclesiastical authority on the part of Morecraft and Sutton suggests little concern for what obedience to God's law means for ecclesiology. On the one hand, theonomists prefer theocracy over pluralism in the political order. But on the other hand, they imply that, for pragmatic purposes, Christians should ignore God's law for his church. If so, where is the theonomy? Who then is the antinomian? I have a friend who is fond of telling theonomists, quote, when it comes to the church, I'm a theonomist, close quote. Many theonomists seem to argue the opposite. They believe the regulative principle for the state, for the family, for education, indeed for all of life, except for the church. Not all theonomists feel this way, I should point out. James Jordan, for example, has written extensively on the institutional church and laments the, quote, relatively low Americanized view of the church, close quote, that is characteristic of much theonomic thinking. As we've noted, this ecclesiology is consistent with Hatch's picture of American evangelicalism. Parachurch interdenominational and theologically tolerant movement. There is another irony here. Among the more notorious claims of theonomy is that, quote, democracy is heresy, close quote, because democracy asserts the will of man over the will of God. Quote, Christianity, Rushdoony claims, again quoting Rushdoony, is basically and radically anti-democratic, close quote. Yet in the areas that Hatch describes, theonomy comes across as a thoroughly democratic movement.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by HeidelbergReformationAssociation.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.